the saga surrounding the so-called funny hull bug is about to come to a close. That saga began many years ago with the introduction of engineering and the ability to engineer mirrored surface composite armor with thermal resistance and mirrored plating, which in turn effectively broke the math of frontier developments when it comes to resistance stacking. The broken math allowed for ships that had an unnatural level of resistance to one particular damage type of choice, typically thermal damage, for ships that are intended to be used as station gankers to destroy commanders inside of stations. That behavior, at least by myself, was discovered a lot later than many others had discovered it earlier, with what originally was a naive video about funny hull anaconda. That naive video very quickly escalated based on its reactions and realization that the main, or at least one of the primary uses of that build was not well intended and instead was used to grieve people inside stations. That escalated into that subsequent video, which denounced the funny hull bug as an exploit, called on people to vote it up onto the issue tracker, which the community has done. And in fact, last I checked, it was the number 4 issue as the most voted issue on the issue tracker as of last week. That in turn, however, resulted in a massive backlash from parts of the PvP and ganking community, which went out of their way to put a bounty on my head, a bounty which was originally very low, but after I called them out for being extremely poor, considering how low that bounty was, that bounty quickly escalated to become a 72 billion credit bounty, I believe the largest in the history of the game, and which in turn led to possibly the largest bounty hunt or manhunt in the history of a game, with an event from a few months back, which I thought was a lot of fun and a nice way to sort of like put a spin on some of those events. Since then, things have been broadly quiet in that Frontier Developments has broadly ignored everything we said with regards to the funny hull bug and decided to live with the status quo of an issue that was introduced 5 years ago and was reported then, but only more recently had become something of interest as far as the community was concerned, in having been talking about it and having it uploaded as an issue on the issue tracker itself. The release of the Caspian Explorer was a massive own goal in this regard, in that Frontier released a ship that has even more optional internals than the Anaconda, and as a result, the Caspian was able to reach 99.6% thermal resistance, which in turn translates into over 700,000 effective thermal hull hit points. Frontier released a stopgap measure yesterday when it launched the Caspian Explorer in removing mirrored surface composite armor, but in reports that were originally reported on the Arc and Delane Discord, Frontier has now issued an email to its Elite Partner Program members stating that the funny hull bug is considered an exploit and shall be sanctioned as such. And furthermore, that exploit is going to be addressed in a balance fix that is coming sometime next week. So chances are we are going to see the last week of the funny hull, now officially called an exploit, and there's very little indication with regards to what, if any, additional balance changes Frontier will be making to armor resistances in consideration of the fact that this bug is getting squashed. In my personal opinion, I do think that hull tanks are generally underwhelming, so I understand why some people decided to create so-called funny hull builds for the purpose of PvE or for the purpose of like even PvP in some cases, as something that had some degree of variety and some degree of fungibility, which normal hull tanks simply do not. Personally, I would like to see hull tanks to be rebalanced, and I would like to see that in this balance pass, Frontier takes a hard look at hull tanks and considers how to make them more viable in comparison and in contrast to shield tanks, which instead are the more common way to go about tanking in Elite Dangerous. So my hope is that this is not simply a squashing of a funny hull bug, but this is a true rebalancing act of hull tanking in Elite Dangerous, which is long overdue, and is something that would lead to the best of all worlds. I do think that eliminating this math error and squashing this bug is way overdue, so I'm glad that it is being done. However, I also appreciate the perspectives of those who say that without this bug, hull tanks are just not viable in the game, and as a result, I very much hope that Frontier will be taking steps in regards to improving the resistances of hull armor and of hull reinforced packages applied to armor. We'll see what happens next week. In the meanwhile, glory to mankind. Come on to make it now.